we get straight on to the next item on the agenda. Just like to, before I do, thank everyone for coming and supporting all of us today, and all the families that have come today, and people who are just interested in what the proceedings of today. It's been a great occasion, and I just hope that we can all live up to your hopes in us to do a really good job. So with that, we'll move to item 6, which is the election of the deputy. Election of the deputy chair. That's quite important. So do we just call?
So it's the same.
We have to same voting.
Yep.
So do we have a mover for option A as our voting procedure, which is the same as we did for the chair? Come on, Tom moved. Councillor Belford, Councillor Wilson seconded. All those in favour for option A? We have another amendment.
Comment, Chair.
Yeah.
Same issue as we had for the election of the chairperson. Is again, I'd like to move a motion that we amend the word from deputy chairman to deputy chairperson, as it is under the.
Okay. Do we have a seconder for that motion?
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
It's in the
wording is already there.
Yeah. Bailey, are you happy that the wording is already there, or you just want it because it's in the actual substantive motion? The wording is already.
Look, I'm not fussed. I just wanted to point out that's the wording of the recommendation, which is what we're voting on. Or am I looking at the wrong one?
Section 25.
Yeah. It's just in the lead-in, but I think we've noted it, and
yeah, okay.
We'll carry on. So, all those in favour of using option A? Anyone against? Carried. Okay. Yes. Thank you, Councillor Dick. So it has been moved. We jumped straight to that gun. It's been moved that by Councillor Dick that Councillor Barker be the deputy chairman. Do we have a seconder for that? Councillor Hewitt?
I have a question. My question is to the Chief Executive. In the past, we have combined the deputy chairperson with the chair of the hearings committee, and this in effect has saved $36,000 over the term of the election cycle. So $36,000 of ratepayers' money is nothing to be scoffed at. My question to you, Andrew, is there any criteria for the chairperson of the hearings committee to be a commissioner, to have commissioner status, to be that chair of that committee? So I'm just looking.
Yeah, sure. The chair of the bit of. Yeah, great. The chairperson of the hearings committee does need to be an accredited RMA, accredited under the RMA commissioner process. I think that's a requirement of that role. So I guess in the previous case, if I can elaborate slightly, in the previous case, clearly the deputy chairperson was also an accredited commissioner.
Can you say that?
The previous chairperson of the hearings committee, as well as deputy chair, was an accredited commissioner.
But I guess the
So
question is it a criteria?
Not for deputy chair.
No, so my question then, before we consider this, is this continued saving of a $36,000 amount of ratepayer funds part of the consideration for this role at this point in time?
My advice to councillors would be simply this: that each role has its own is distinct, and you as councillors need to elect the person who you think is best equipped to be deputy chair, and not mix up the issue of the hearings committee with that.
That would certainly be my view from the chair, but I do appreciate Councillor Hewitt that trying to save the council money, but perhaps we should look at that as a secondary thing after we have elected the deputy chair, which is an important role. So we do have a mover. Do we have a seconder?
I'll second this.
We have a seconder from Councillor Curtin. Do we have anyone else? Yes, certainly. But can we just see if we have any? Do we have anyone else nominated for this role? Therefore, Councillor Dick, you can speak.
Okay. Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Speaking in support of Councillor Rick Barker, I'd firstly like to note that the Deputy Chair position is often an understated and an underrated one, and possibly what I'm going to say to some extent would mitigate Councillor Hewitt's concerns. My view of the role of the Deputy Chair, and I've worked with a number of them over the years, is obviously to support the Chair and stand in the absence of the Chair. Importantly too, to be a sounding board for the Chair and to provide wise counsel. But as well as that, there is an important relationship between the Deputy Chair and his or her colleagues, the councillors, because that person is uniquely placed to be, if you like, the go-between, the mediator, and to help maintain harmony and team effort and try and ensure to the best of our ability that we are all rowing the one waka. Now, clearly, Deputy Chair needs skills, experience, leadership ability and good relationship skills. And I'll just comment that in terms of Councillor Barker's experience is very well known as a parliamentarian and as a cabinet minister. But in the last term, and I say this with respect, he did something rather unprecedented for local government, and that is, in effect, he led a parliamentary style opposition caucus. Not always in opposition, but clearly working together as a caucus. However, when roles change and the numbers change and you're in a position of responsibility, then a different approach has to be brought to bear, because responsibility cannot be avoided if you are a chairman or a deputy chair or a committee chair for that matter. And I am confident that Rex and Rick will exercise that responsibility without fear or favour for not just the constituencies that they were elected from, but the whole of this diverse region that we have sworn allegiance to.
Thank you, Councillor. Do you wish to speak?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. It's a pleasure to second my former parliamentary colleague, Rick Barker, for the Deputy Chair role. Rick had the, I don't know whether it was the fortune or not, but he took on the role that I departed from as Minister of Customs, and I had the task of trying to keep Japanese vehicles out of the country, and Rick, I think he let some more back in, so hopefully we can avoid those sorts of calamities with that sort of scenario. But it's a pleasure to have Rick in this role, a very experienced person, a good man, Rex, to have as your deputy, a very good man to have in that role to support you in it. I would comment also that even though the both of you come and represent the Hastings constituency, Napier's not that far away. It's about 120 miles from Hastings, but only 12 miles the other way. And I'd like to add that in that your respective roles, you'll recognise that not only do we have a catchment called the Ruataniwha, but we have one called Ahuriri, and I will be lobbying you very seriously over the next 3 years to make sure Ahuriri gets its fair share and that we do something very substantive to offer its protection as the most prominent and eminent wetland area on the whole northern east coast of the region. So congratulations to both yourself, Mr. Chair, and to your Deputy, Rick Barker, as a great team to go forward, and I look forward to the coming months and weeks and years to that strength of leadership that I know is there for all the people of Hawke's Bay, the whole region, making tough decisions that are obviously in front of us over this 3-year period.
Thank you, Councillor. We have a nominator and a seconder. We'll take a vote. All those in favour of Councillor Barker being the chair? Right. Vote is carried. Deputy chair. I can see he'll be trouble. Okay. Where you are, and you have no right to reply. You've already had enough to say.
I'd just like to say a few words as the chair did.
I
I just want to say thank you very much to Councillor Dick for nominating me. Your comments are appreciated. The quote you made about fear or favour, I'd complete, without fear or favour, ill will or affection is be the thing that I do. And I also accept your challenge. The Deputy Chair is an understated one, and you're quite right, it's to be a bridge between the Chair and the Council. It's to be also a sounding board and somewhere where people can take issues or issues can be sounded out and resolved. So I intend to play that role. I understand it and I know it well. I want to say thank you to Councillor Neil Curtin for giving me for supporting me. The thing it takes a little bit of a poke at me about inheriting his job with customs, but I just you know how politics is. I inherited customs, and the people were waiting an hour to get through the border at Auckland when I got it. After a thing, we got it down to 20 minutes. So I just hope that I can continue to improve on his work beforehand. And the other thing is, I'd also say to councillors, Alan made a comment before which highlighted the fact that we were a council which was cleaved in two on two very important issues. One was on the issue of amalgamation, the other was on the Ruataniwha Dam. That was a crippling problem for us to carry. Let's be clear about that. People took sides, people defended their corners, they argued it passionately, and we worked our way through it. I am hopeful that with one issue gone completely, the amalgamation, and hopefully I'll get Neil to see that Hastings is actually closer to him in Napier than he has done for a long time. There is no Mason-Dixon line across there, Neil. You're quite welcome to go across any time you want. I come here all the time. We get rid of that sort of parochialism, and hopefully we can come to a resolution on the issue of the Ruataniwha Dam, and then begin to focus on the really important issues that are in front of this region. We are living in fabulous economic times. I do not think I've said for the last 20 years, this best we've ever lived in. Rex corrects me and he says the best we've ever lived in since the wool boom. Well, it just shows you that he's older than me because I can't remember the wool boom. But we live in fabulous times, and it's our responsibility to make the best of them, not just, tutu away our time. We've got the best times to make the big difference, and so this is the 3 years to do it, in my view. So I welcome the challenge, and I look forward to working with councillors, working closely with the staff, and I endorse what Rex said. We've got fabulous staff, some of the best scientific staff I've seen in a regional council. I'm very impressed with them. We need to give them the opportunity for them to show us the best that they can be. That's what I see it as. Give them the opportunity to show us the best that they can be. And I don't think we've done that yet, but I look forward to that. Okay, thank you.
Cowboy or the Parramatta, the cowboy from the Parliament. As you affectionately know, of course, your lovely wife. companion Sandra. I just want to, just briefly, I don't want to monopolise proceedings here today. Just a couple of things people may or may not know about my dear friend. Friday the 19th of August 1994, Tamona Freezer Works shut down. As you all aware, it was a devastating time for many, including myself and my family. Rick Barker was the then our representative in Parliament, and I can remember we were all congregating. We were locked out from the works on this particular day. We rocked up there. We were all locked out, 2,000 of us in fact, and there was this guy traversing the stage and waxing lyrical as he normally does. And I can remember screaming out from the middle of that multitude, what about the families? What about the husbands? What about the wives? You've not mentioned them. And as a result of that, Rick and I must have rendezvoused at his office. Well, I can tell you now, in the weeks, months that followed, Rick never left our side, as busy as he was. He was in the Tamona Resource Centre, peeling potatoes, peeling spuds. He was there uplifting and inspiring despite his busy schedule. And I can remember when we were getting these pumpkins ready for the families, I said to him, I don't care what political genre you represent from this day forth, I will always vote for you. You have my vote. You've won my heart and you've won the hearts of our people. And I stayed true to that, even though we didn't always agree. One other story, I had grandeurs of being in central government, so I was invited to participate by the then leader of the Labour Party, and believe it or not, I couldn't get my hands on the list of financial members. You needed at least 6 financial members to tick you off, so I couldn't get my hands on the list for whatever the reason was. This man, on a cold, wet, damp, terrible Sunday afternoon, drove to Gisborne off his own bat, collected those names, came back and handed them over to me. And that's typical of this man. And that's what you've got here. Somebody who will go beyond the call of duty. Kia ora.
Thank you, Hanari, and thank you, Rick. You can see we're going to have very long council meetings with all these experienced politicians who love to wax very Churchillian speeches. But yeah, welcome aboard, Rick. I'm looking forward to working with you. So we'll move to item 6, which is the council prayer. Now, it is on page 19. You will have all read it. What I'd like to do is just to take some discussions. What do people think about this paper? So I'd just like to open it up to the meeting with your thoughts.
If I may be so bold as to begin, Mr. Chair. There's been much said about the decline in voter turnout in local body elections. I think we can all agree that that's a concern. There have been any number of reasons put forward why this turnout has declined. We need online elections. Let's go back to using ballot boxes instead of postal votes. It's all the media's fault. Personally, I think it's because local bodies have become irrelevant to many citizens. They no longer seem to speak for them or represent them. And that's what worries me about the wording of the current prayer used to open council meetings. It ignores our partnership with Tangata Whenua. It is irrelevant to many citizens. Muslims, Hindus, Buddhists, Jews, pagans, Jedi, and many other religions place no importance on Jesus Christ, so why should the Hawke's Bay Regional Council? It is so 19th century. That's why I propose that we revisit the wording of the prayer, perhaps make it an affirmation instead. I don't know, but I'm happy for the Chair to give it some thought, perhaps even consult with the public before reporting back to us. It would send a message to all the citizens of Hawke's Bay that the Hawke's Bay Regional Council wants to be inclusive, that we want to be relevant to everyone, not just to the followers of one particular sect. And for that reason, Mr. Chair, I'd like to propose an alternative wording for the motion, that the Chair considers ways to begin meetings of the Hawke's Bay Regional Council in a more inclusive manner and to bring any appropriate suggestions to the next council meeting for approval.
Councillor, so we have a motion. I wasn't actually before we take a motion, are you happy that we have some discussion?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
I'd just like to have discussion before we take the motion. Does any other thoughts about the prayer? It's a really important topic, and Councillor Bailey has given his views on it, which may be different from others. Us, our views? Councillor Barker, I know you have a view.
Well,
My wife has a view.
can I say this, that I've been through this discussion on a number of occasions. Firstly, there's quite often an argument put forward that we have had a lot of other people come to this country, and what we do here doesn't represent them. Well, I'm not persuaded by that. We are who we are. We do things by our traditions, by our ways, and we stick with them. So that's my starting point. But I also am aware that not everybody is, I won't call Christianity a sect, a religion. Not everybody is a Christian. And it is a religion that's been here for a long time. I'm not particularly religious. I'd call myself an atheist. But I always have voted for the prayer at the start, because I think we need something which is solemn, dignified to start the meeting. This is not just an ordinary round a cup of coffee place. So I think there has to be something which is solemn and dignified. If Councillor Bailey is challenging us to think of something new and different, well, I'm happy to have that. But I'm also a little bit conservative. This will be remarkable to some people. I don't believe in change just for the sake of change. So if it's going to be a change, it has to be a change for improvement. Something better, something different. And also, the last thing I would say on this, I'm not persuaded that the fall off in people's participation in local government elections is a consequence of an antiquated 19th century prayer. I never heard that mentioned at all. You know, I think what it's the fall off is because of how we go about our business and what we do. So that's the big thing here. But I support Councillor Bailey's resolution for us to have a think and for the Chair to come back with some insight, hopefully divine insight, on how we might be able to make this thing go forward.
Before we move, so we appear to have a mover and a seconder, but we're just going to hold that while you...
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
Yes?
Point of order. Mr. Chair, I wonder whether, in fact, an alternate motion is required when you read the current recommendation. I'm assuming that's the motion, and that the Council adopts the custom of commencing meetings of the Hawke's Bay Regional Council with a prayer. Now, that recommendation as it stands doesn't in itself suggest the form or shape of the prayer. We could perhaps accept that recommendation but come back with the content of the prayer after due deliberation.
Could I suggest, that is actually accurate, could I suggest we change the word prayer to karakia?
No.
Yes, Councillor Hewitt?
All three of us had a hand.
Oh, sorry, I didn't notice, I was so focused.
All right. I support the recommendation. I think that starting off with a prayer is quite appropriate, and it's a time when we can all be unified. And I also think it hasn't specified the prayer. The prayer wasn't included in this agenda, so whoever's taking their turn to stand up may wish to add some words. And, you know, I've stood up quite often and said the prayer. There's been times when I've been tempted to add the odd word, like bless this mess or something like that. But, you know, perhaps we can all add our own twist to it when we take our turn. But I certainly would be very, very sorry to see this being thrown out by a new council.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Look, I think this is pretty straightforward. Resolution, prayer, karakia. The deputy can read it in Hindu if he wants. I mean, seriously, this is the placeholder that we start our meeting with. We have it in Māori. We have a version in Māori. When Mike Mohi does the prayer, which he does sometimes, he makes his own prayer. If you think back to the Environment Services Committee, we started that with a karakia. I just think it's an important placeholder that we start our meeting with. And I'm quite happy with the resolution as it stands, and I'd be happy to move it, Mr. Chair, if that was helpful.
To clarify, you're saying prayer as being quite generic, not necessarily prayer what David, who was a very good friend of mine, and Judy Mills proposed. The standard prayer. You're saying prayer as a generic.
Well, that's what it
Could be
says here.
anything.
We
Yeah,
have
no,
a
that's what
standard.
it says.
We have a standard prayer, which generally is read, but at times it's changed by whoever's reading it. As a say, Mr. Mohi, when he takes that part of the meeting, at times he doesn't read the Māori version of that current prayer. He does his own interpretation. And if you think back to your previous committee chairmanship, we'd start Environment Services with a karakia. I just think it's the starting point of the meeting, and I'm happy to move the wording as it stands.
I'd like to make a comment. You put one movement on hold.
I want everyone to comment on this. So, I do think it's really important.
So
It sends a message.
I'm interested in Councillor Wilson's comments on this matter because two things. The first is, in 3 years of sitting around this table, I never heard anybody give that anything other than the prayer that's in the cupboard that was read out. That's the first thing. The second thing is, Councillor Wilson had to go around cap in hand every meeting looking for somebody that was prepared to read the thing. And I would say that he got less than a 50% strike rate. So if that's the level of commitment that councillors have to read that thing, we need to have another look at whether it's the right thing to read, because I think that it is important, I think, to start the meeting in some sort of a formal way with a prayer or an affirmation. And I'm not religious, but I was prepared to read it because I felt that each of us had to make that small but significant contribution at the outset of our deliberations. But if a whole lot of councillors aren't prepared to read that prayer, then we need to have a look at what we're asking them to do, because I'd like to see every councillor participate in that way at times during this 3 years.
Yeah, I think that's a very fair point. I'm going to go back to the original motion, Councillor Bailey's, which was seconded by Councillor Dick, that we pause on this and that it falls into my lap, and I will talk to everybody individually and see their position on this and come back to what is the resolution of your individual thoughts. So we're mover and seconder. I want to move that, that this lays on the table. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Do you want to record that? Just you.
Maybe an incoming council can't even agree on prayer being the start of the meeting.
Yeah, well, I appreciate those thoughts. I actually think it's a very wonderful day that we discuss how we're going to go forward on this. So, carried. So, we have item 7, fixing the date for the first ordinary